What's up, gang? Welcome to Room and Board. My name is Chris George, and today we are reviewing, Twilight Imperium 3. And why not Twilight Imperium 4? Well, because it's basically the same game. Why not Twilight Imperium 3 with the expansions? Well, because I've never played the expansions, and because I am not spending another cent on this atrocious mess of a board game. And I know I've already alienated a ton of you with my alien hating. I know you're screaming at your screens, no, the expansions fix it! The next version makes it better! And please tell me why I'm wrong in the comments below, but this video needed to be made because, surprise, 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 some things just aren't worth the hype. And it was time for me to stop living with a coffin housing this game that doesn't seem like it ever will die. So this video is to address, should you pick up that cheap copy of Twilight Imperium 3 that you see on sale now that the 4th edition has been out for 4 years and people are finally getting rid of their copies? It's a classic, right? After all, Twilight Imperium 3 is still rated in the top 100 on Board Game Geek. I think it's still number 85 right now. So for those of you who are unwilling to spend $170 plus on a game that you might play once a year, well, you've come to the right place. As you can probably tell, it certainly wasn't for me. But that doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be wrong for you. But wait, of course it does, because my opinion is definitive and infallible and correct. And like a Sith Lord, absolute. But for the sake of argument, let's take a look. Now, the overall concept of Twilight Imperium is fairly simple, but there are a lot of fiddly rules. So much so that the errata FAQ currently consists of 15 pages, adding on to the already 44-page rulebook. Don't worry, there are numerous cheat sheets, player aids, and resources all put together by fans that you can access online, and I would definitely encourage you to do so, especially printing out tech trees for everyone if you're going to approach this game. All that is to say, I'm not going to cover all the rules of the game. I'm just going to give you a general overview that will probably still be too involved, so you can get a sense if you've never dipped your toes into it and are contemplating picking up a copy secondhand, or even going the whole hog into Twilight Imperium 4. So in Twilight Imperium, you play as one of 10 different races, all vying for galactic supremacy. See, the Lazax Emperor used to rule the galaxy on their seat in the middle of the universe on Mechatol Rex. That is, until the Twilight Wars broke out amongst the different factions and races in the galaxy, and the Lazax were wiped out, as so many intergalactic emperors often are. And no one has taken the throne since, until now. Hey, it's a pretty neat setup. The game starts with everyone getting a random race and a certain number of system hexes, depending on the player count, with which you will build the galaxy from the center, Mechatol Rex, until it reaches your various home systems at the edge of the galaxy. Because each race has its own starting hex system that will contain 1 to 3 planets in them. And as you can see, I've got this game currently set up for 3 players because, honestly, that's all that fits best around my table. Now, the planets will have 2 numbers on them, representing both their resource value and their influence value. And resources are generally used to build ships and build up your armies, and the influence is generally used to help you vote on stuff, when you enact new political laws and all have to vote. Now, the game, as many games often are played over a course of a series of phases and actions within those phases. So the first phase is the strategy phase, where players will draft different strategy cards. This determines what special power, or powers if you have 3 to 4 players, because then you'll draft 2, that you'll have going into the next round, and it also determines the player order with the lowest number, the lowest initiative, going first. Drafting powers, who doesn't love that? Now once that is done, the game proceeds to the action phase, which is where most of the bulk of the game takes place. In turn order, you can take one action. You can use your strategy card and you get to do the primary thing while everyone else has a chance to pay a token and do the secondary thing. You can activate a system and do a whole bunch of stuff in there, Or you can do a weird action called a transfer action that really won't make sense to you right now, so I'm not even going to bother explaining it, but basically it's to consolidate your fleets. And finally, if you can't or don't want to take any more actions, you pass. Once everybody has passed, the round ends, the strategy cards go back into the center to be drafted for the next round, and there's the status phase where basically you tidy up the board and you have a chance to complete one objective that's been revealed, scoring that for points. And then you check to see if anybody's won yet. The game plays until somebody hits 10 victory points, or if you're playing the long epic game, 14 victory points. And if nobody gets there, at some point a card will be flipped over that says game over, and the game just immediately ends, and whoever's in the lead wins. And that's pretty much the game in a nutshell. That's all you really need to know about the feel of it. However, one of the most interesting parts about this game has to do with your command counters, which are basically how many actions you get to take during the round. But during the status phase, everybody gets 2 of these. Some races might get more, and you can reassign them anywhere you want on your player map. So as you can see, each race has its own unique player map with a different starting fleet, starting technology, and special abilities. All this stuff down here is just a breakdown of what happens during each phase, the order in which they occur, and the cost for different units. Although be aware, there is a misprint in the 3rd edition on all of these sheets, where it states that your PDS units, your Planetary Defense System units, they cost 1 resource, where in reality, in the rulebook, they cost 2. So just be aware of that. Anyway, over here, you have 3 sections where you can allocate your command counters. One being fleet supply, which determines how many ships you can have at one time in a given system. If you happen to move more ships than your current fleet supply into a system, and you don't realize it and you notice it later, well then, one of them just blows up because your engineers, they could only work so hard. Then you have the strategy allocation, which you have to spend a command counter from if you wish to perform someone's secondary action of their strategy card. Which is interesting because you're not going to have enough to do it every single time, so you have to pick and choose which of these secondary actions are right for you. And then finally, you have your command pool, which you use to activate systems on the board. Like we said before, once the system is activated, you can do a number of things in it. Those things include moving units into it. PDS units can try to blow you up. You can try to blow up enemy spaceships in the system before they blow you up. You can also land on a planet and kill everyone there and take it under your own control so that you can enslave the people and make them generate resources for you, or you could use your influence over that planet to vote the way you want to in the Galactic Senate. Now keep in mind, once you've activated a system and put a command counter in it, you can't do anything else in that system, which includes moving anything in or out, unless you somehow are able to remove that command counter and then, woof, your ships, they're refreshed, they're revived. Otherwise, they're tired and they need to have a little nap before they can move on. You can move people through that system, but you just can't end in that particular system. So that's Twilight Imperium. I'm done this time, I swear. You build your ships, you take over planets, you use those resources to build more ships and take over more planets to complete these little objective cards that get flipped over every time somebody plays strategy card number 8. Could have just done an insert. This being the strategy card that reveals a new objective and gives the person who plays it, just gives them 2 points. You just have them. You also have these secret objectives, which generally have to do with controlling the board, but your regular objectives are usually along the lines of spend 10 resources, spend 20 influence, have 4 technology upgrades, control 18 planets outside your home system, control Mechatol Rex and have 4 dreadnoughts circling around it, all those sorts of types of things. Although I'm pretty sure that last one is just a secret objective and not a regular objective. And this should give you a clue about the game itself, which looks like it should be about combat. Heck, it's even got the tagline, Pax Magnifica Bellum Gloriosum, written on the bottom of the box, which roughly translates to, yeah, I looked it up, magnificent peace, glorious war. Or, peace is good, but war is better. It should be a game all about the fighting. Its tagline is literally all about combat, but in the end, it really isn't. There isn't a single point that can be earned by fighting an opponent. Let me say that again. In a game whose tagline is peace is good, but war is better, there isn't a single objective which gives you 1 victory point for a glorious battle. Most of the objectives boil down to, have you progressed enough in your race? You have? Wow. Here's an attaboy for you. Oh, I mean, a point. But the thing is, pretty much everybody else around the table will have progressed in a similar way, which means everybody is getting those points, and which means everybody is constantly in contention for the win, which should be a good thing, especially in a game that's so long. You never want to have a front runner that's insurmountable 6 hours into a 12-hour game. That would be horrible. But instead, it just continues to make these objectives seem even more pointless and not grounded in the theme than they already are. See, Twilight Imperium is a game that is filled with possibilities. There is a lot of lore and backstory going on here to create what feels like a really complex and clever reality. The designer even credits Tolkien. The designer even credits J.R.R. Tolkien as his inspiration. The first 2 pages of the rulebook are just story. There's a backstory about each individual race on their player mat. Each planet has its own little flavor text so you can know something about the planet that you've just conquered on your way to total galactic domination. It's a game that just talking about it conceptually gets me so excited. And then I played it, and it just sucks. There's just really no other way to put it. I love so many of the concepts of this game. I love that each race feels like it should be different. Keyword here being should. The space Vladimir Putins from the Barony of Letnev are all about fighting, while the soft bone fish people, the Jolnar, are all about upgrading their technologies. While the sweet space hippos of the Jaka Kingdom, they're all about being the best diplomat. And while the most prominent race, at least on the box, the Lions, the Emirates of Hakan, are actually, well, they're just focused on trade. Which of course you would expect that from a race of space lions. Why would lions, some of the most ferocious predators on this planet, be anything other than scheming, docile trade merchants? Of course. Honestly, I don't mind the juxtaposition. Sure, run with it. I mean, I love the concept of the strategy cards. I get a great power, you get a weaker version of that power, and you have to pay for it. Heck, it worked in Puerto Rico. Why not throw it into the middle of a space opera? And honestly, I am foaming at the mouth for the idea of the political phase. That every round, a new law can come into being and can change the rules of the game. That is exciting. That should make negotiations and diplomacy very important. Again, the key word is should. I love that you can spend your time teching up your race, so you have a bunch of powers potentially nobody else has. All of these concepts, I think you can see, get me really excited to play the game. And then even after my first game, which took 10 hours, I thought, okay, sure, it took a long time, but we'd planned for that, and we can see a lot of great things in there. And I'm sure it would have been a better experience if we weren't constantly looking at the rulebook and figuring out these little fiddly bits to see what ship does what, when. And so we played it again. And then I realized the more I thought about this game, the more it just doesn't live up to this potential and doesn't live up to this status in which it has been lauded over so many other games. It never lives up fully to the promises that it makes you at the beginning. It is the fool's gold of board games. It is filled with empty promises, a tagline that promises combat in a game where no combat is important, to the political cards that promise to change the game permanently in exciting ways, with the interesting ones being lost in a bloated deck of cards that you're never going to get through, and filled with votes that aren't memorable enough to matter, to their different races who promise with their different abilities that they'll feel different, that after a turn or two, once you've acquired some technologies, just end up losing their unique appeal. But what is most astonishing to me, and even having discussed it ad nauseum with the other players, and even with it being a long time since I have played this, I mean, I wrote most of this down months before I started the channel because I knew I wanted to write my thoughts down, and I wanted to capture that feeling while it was fresh in my mind. Even with these poor experiences that I've had, I still want to give it a second chance. There's so much here that talking about, I want to go back to, that I feel like, well, I have to be wrong about this, right? that I'm desperately hoping would be different if I played again, even though I know in my heart of hearts that it won't be. I would still love to play a 6-player game with avid Twilight Imperium fans and see if their enthusiasm rubbed off against me. And if it did, that would be amazing, but it's still just, it's just a bad game. And I'm generally someone who can like anything. The objectives in themselves are so divested from the theme, especially in a game that seems to really pride itself on theme. There's just such a disconnect between cultivating your space empire and then waiting until the end of the turn and, oh, now I spend 10 influence. Whoops, now I spend 20 resources that I collected from my planets. On what? Why? Doesn't matter. Here's a point for you. Who cares? It's so anticlimactic in a game that pushes itself forward as being the board game experience to end all experiences. The climax that's better than any other sci-fi climax you could ask for, and with less tentacles. See, if you look online, you can see countless house rules, variations, and caveats as to how to enjoy the experience. See, I've read that you must buy the expansion because that fixes the game. And to be honest, yeah, the 8th strategy card is a bad design. Basically, you pick this strategy card and you get 2 points. Just have them of your 10 points. So obviously it means that you have to pick this card. And the game itself then basically automates your choice for you, basically passing it around the table, which is so ludicrous to me. That by design, you don't get additional choices. It's like the designer ran out of ideas. And the Shattered Empire expansion does fix that in a way that I think sounds better. Now you get 1 point if you control Mechatol Rex, and you can complete as many objectives as you want at the end of the turn instead of just 1. So the expansion, hey, it fixes that. And I'm sure you'll read in the comments of people who agree that the expansion is significant in terms of fixing the design. But that also you should really probably play it now, because now, finally in the 4th edition, well, now it's really good. And so my question becomes, how many beta testers have spent countless time and money, who have spent hundreds of dollars time and time again to get it to this passable version that it is now? Or if it's taken that much time and that much money, was it ever really worth fixing in the first place? Or is it just an overhyped time sink of a board game that you spent $150 on, plus the expansions that now sits in its coffin shelf box, which by the way is only half full of content, literally half full, that you get to the table maybe once a year? I mean, hey, I can understand the sentiment. I can understand if I had spent that much money on Twilight Imperium, I would want to find ways to make it enjoyable for myself and my group. Absolutely make those house rules and play with those house rules. If it fixes the game and you're able to have more fun with it, you go for it. That's fantastic. And make sure to write about it too, because maybe your fixes and your house rules will end up in the inevitable 5th edition that fixes all the flaws of the 4th. Because my hypothesis is maybe, just maybe, due to its length and it being played so infrequently, and because of that infrequency and the rich lore and the fervor around the universe itself, maybe Twilight Imperium is the type of game that each time its flaws fade away into the memory of spending a day with 2 to 5 friends, sharing this collective experience of what promised to be a space epic. And there's absolutely merit in that shared experience. In fact, I'd say in this regard, Twilight Imperium's greatest strength might in fact be its length, because there is some sort of magic that happens when you spend a day, an entire day, with your best friends who've all committed to being engaged in a singular activity for that length of time and to go through this journey together. That is memorable. That the 6 of you were able to find time in your busy schedules to organize a day, and it worked out so magnificently that you, all 6 of you, the best pals, were able to spend and share this day together. And if it is Twilight Imperium, of all things, that brings you together, then absolutely what a wonderful thing to purchase. And hey, you can justify the one play with the collective hours spent doing this thing. $180, $30 a player, $3 an hour. It almost seems reasonable when you put it that way. Again, I understand the sentiment. There are just better experiences out there to share. One that will reward the gamer. Games that have a better narrative arc, less fiddly rules, better mechanics, and of equal length to take up your whole day. Twilight Imperium may once have been the pinnacle of board games. That's a distinct possibility. My guess is it was just a giant game filled with fiddly rules, which people misinterpreted for depth of strategy and complexity, but hey, I'm certainly not going to go back in time and find out. I have much more sinister uses for my time machine. But just like some of the greats that came before in our industry, some that pioneered the industry, that shaped the stage for modern board games as they are now. Nearing the end of 2021, games like Catan, Dominion, Seven Wonders. Well, for the modern board gamer, which I assume is you because you've made it this far into this video, a video about Twilight Imperium 3, well, these titles are now sometimes often seen as lacking. This isn't a review about Catan, Seven Wonders. I'm not going to delve too deeply into them. And I still enjoy those games to a degree, but why not turn the same lens on Twilight Imperium? Even with the 4th edition. And I've looked through the rules and watched many videos on the subject of the differences between the two, and I really don't see that much has changed. When it comes down to it, for me, the bottom line is Twilight Imperium is selfish. It is a game that cares more about itself than the gamer's experience. The inspiration from J.R.R. Tolkien is clear. It's as if the designer only read the Silmarillion and none of Tolkien's other work, thereby missing out on the worlds and the stories that can be created on the back of solid lore. Without it, you're just turning a fictional space encyclopedia into a game. And I don't know about you at home, but to me, reading the encyclopedia has never really been fun. I've never really enjoyed the time it takes to search through the pages to find that elusive word. I would rather read a better book. All this to say, if you like Twilight Imperium, hey, I'm thrilled for you. If a friend offers you a day to get together and play Twilight Imperium, go for it. Maybe you'll find something in it. Personally, I'd rather play Dune. It's a quarter of the cost, comparable length, and delivers on the promise of a space epic conquest in a way that Twilight Imperium never will for me. Please go check that one out instead. I care about you. I'm trying to save you money. To not make the same mistakes that I once did in pursuit of space excellence. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you found this video somewhat helpful, or at least my pain was somewhat entertaining. Really, that's all I can ever hope for. That's why I'm in so much internal conflict on a daily basis. For you! And hey, if you think I'm dead wrong and have horrible opinions, and our opinions are completely opposite, well, it looks like you just found your next favorite antithesis reviewer. You're welcome. Everything I like, you'll hate. Everything you hate. That's the same. Everything I hate, you'll like. So stick around for the negative ones. You're welcome. I will accept my payment in likes and subscribes. Thank you so much for watching. Once again, my name is Chris George. I don't have a catchphrase, but it is unbelievable that any of you made it this far, because I barely did. If you have a wonderful day. Where's my Jolnar? Fuck. Where's the Jolnar? Where are you?